So, good day, everybody. I hope that you are well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on subject and predicate. And before we start with our lesson on subject and predicate, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, so we are doing our grade 8 English lesson on subject and predicate. And before we start, we're logging on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password. Once we've selected the subject of language arts, grade 8, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of subject and predicate. All right, so now we're doing our subject and we're doing our predicate, right? All right, so we're doing the lessons on subject and predicate. And during the course of this lesson, we're going to find out what's a subject as well as what is a predicate, specifically a complete subject. All right, so we're going to identify now the lesson or the complete subject or complete predicate of a sentence, right? And when we select the predicate or the subject of a sentence, then it says every sentence has a complete subject and it has a complete verb or predicate. And the complete subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. So we said that every sentence has a complete subject and every sentence has a complete predicate. And when it comes to a complete subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. So when it comes to a complete subject, one is probably English and one is Afrikaans, I think. For the yeah, because this is English grade 8 and this is now the first one for today. And then I think there's probably maths grade 8. I'm not sure. But this is an English grade 8 class. And we say that a complete subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. And it is a simple subject plus any other words that describes or modifies it. And when it comes to, we look at examples, right, of our simple, or let's say our complete subject. It says she sleeps late on a weekend or on the weekends. So if we were to select our subject that tells us what or who is doing something, then we would say she is our subject. Her best friend sleeps on the weekends. Once again, if we select the subject, right, and then it is her best friend. So we see that when it comes to a simple, not a simple, but a complete subject, right? A complete subject, it can either have like, let's say one word that tells us who or what is doing something, or we can have more than one word that tells us who or what is doing something. And if we look at our example so far, we said she sleeps on the weekends. So she is our subject, or her best friend sleeps late on the weekends. And then her best friend is our complete subject, right? And if we look at both of those subjects, right, it says she as well as her best friend. Both of these are complete subjects. And both complete subjects, it tells us who sleeps on a weekend. And the complete predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing, the action. All right. So that is a complete subject. Now we have a complete predicate. And a complete predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. Remember, we said a complete subject is who or what is doing something. And a complete predicate, on the other hand, it tells us what the subject is doing. And we said a complete predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing, right? It's the action. And it is a simple predicate plus any other words that describe or modify it. And if we look at examples, right, it says her best friend sleeps. Her best friend sleeps. Which means that if we look at the complete predicate, then sleeps is our predicate. So we say that her best friend sleeps, and we selected our complete predicate, which is sleeps. So sleep is the action. Sleep tells us what the subject is doing. All right. So also when it comes to complete, let's say predicate, we say that the complete predicate is sleeps, right? Because it tells us what the subject is doing. So the predicate can either be one word or it can be more than one word. For example, we had her best friend sleeps, right? So that is one word. Sleeps being one word that tells us, um, and if we look at our other simple subject, not subject, predicate, then we say her best friend sleeps late on weekends. So we see that we have a complete subject that tells us who is doing what, or who is, or what the subject is doing. And we said that her best friend sleeps, which means that there can be either one predicate or it can be more than one predicate, right? And the complete predicate, it basically tells us what the best friend does. So the best friend either sleeps or the best friend sleeps late on weekends. All right. So we basically have a complete subject that we said it tells us who or what is doing something, and we have a complete predicate that tells us what the subject is doing. And we said both our complete predicate as well as a complete subject can either be one word, right, to describe or modify it, or it can be more than one word to describe and to modify it, right? All right. So we said that we have a complete subject, which tells us what the tells us the action, right, that is being done, tells us who or what is doing something. Then we have a complete predicate that tells us what who is doing, right? So if we look at our activity, it says select two words that make up a complete subject. And remember we said that to make up a complete subject, it can be either one word or it can be more than one word, right? So, dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. So, dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. We need to select if that is a. So, we can say we need to select the two words that make up the complete subject. And if we select the two words that make up a complete subject, and then we say it is a dedicated volunteers. That basically tells us who or what removed the litter from the beach. They are the ones that tell us who or what is doing something. Those are the ones who remove the litter from the beach because they say dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. And we had to select two words that make up a complete subject. Dedicated volunteers. So we said dedicated volunteers, that is our complete subject. If we look at another activity sentence question, it says we need to select six words that make up a complete predicate. A bad business deal caused friction between the two brothers. So, a bad business deal caused friction between the two brothers. And if they want us to select six words that make up a complete predicate, right? Six words that make up a complete predicate. And then we will start with it caused friction between the two brothers. So, which means that a business deal or bad business deal is causing friction now between two brothers. And then we said, if we look at the this one that says select the two words that make up a complete subject. It says the director creates suspense with haunting music. So the director creates suspense with haunting music, and we need to select the two words that make up a complete subject. And remember, we said a subject, it tells us either who or what is doing something. Who or what is doing something. So we need to select two words to make the complete subject, and we said it is the director. So the director, that is our complete subject. Because who is creating the suspense in the music? It is the director. Who or what is doing something? The director. Right? So now we're going to our test. So we're going to identify the complete subject or complete predicate of a sentence, right? And we're going to select 5 words that make up the complete predicate. Remember, we said the predicate, it basically tells us the action that is being done, right? By, let's say, the subject. So it says Paco and Danielle waved from across the room. So we need to select 5 words that make up the complete predicate. Tell us who is doing what action is being done. The action that is being done. Is it waved from across the room or Paco and Danielle waved from? And if we select the 5 words that make up the complete predicate, we can say waved from across the room. Because that is the 5 words that make up a complete predicate. It's the action that is being done. Now we need to select the 5 words that make up the complete predicate. Another 5 words. Fleas can jump 7 inches high. So fleas can jump 7 inches high. And if we select the 5 words that make up a complete predicate, we can say, can jump 7 inches high. Because fleas can jump 7 inches high. So we're going to select the 2 words that make up a complete subject. That tells us who or what is doing the action. So who or what is doing the action? It says the director creates suspense with haunting music. So what is the 2 words that make up a complete subject? Is it the director or is it the haunting music? So the director creates suspense with haunting music. We need to select the two words that make up a complete subject. Is it the director, which tells us who or what is doing something, or haunting music? And if we select the two words that make up a complete subject, remember, subject, it tells us who or what is doing the action. So, who is doing the action? That is a subject. Who or what is doing the action? Is it the director that's doing the action or haunting music that's doing the action? All right, yes, and that is correct. So the director is correct because the director, it tells us who or what is doing the action. So well done. The director is correct. We need to now also select two words that make up a complete subject. It says dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. So dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. So we need to select the two words that make up a complete subject. Dedicated volunteers or the beach. All right. So if we select the two words to make up the complete subject, then yes, our complete subject is dedicated volunteers. So well done. Dedicated volunteers is correct because it tells us who or what is doing the action. Now we're going to identify the simple subject or simple predicate within a sentence, right? So each sentence or every sentence has a subject as well as a predicate, right? And we said a subject or a simple subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. That is a simple subject. It is a subject noun or it is a pronoun without any other words that describe or modify it. So a simple subject tells us who or what is doing something, and it is just the subject noun or the pronoun without any other words that describes or modify it. And we said in our previous earlier, and we said a complete subject, right? It can be one word or it can be more than one word that tells us who or what is doing something. But now with a simple subject, right? It is basically only the subject noun or a pronoun without any other words that describes or modifies it. And we say that when it comes to a simple subject, right, we select the subject noun or the pronoun without any other words that describes or modifies it. And an example of that is Jennifer sleeps late on the weekends. And if we were to select our noun, right, and then it would be Jennifer, because that is our noun. And it says her best friend sleeps late on the weekends. Her best friend. And we see the simple subject. It tells us who or what is doing something. And it's basically just the noun as well as the pronoun without any other words that describes or modifies it, right? And the simple subject also, right? We see that it consists of basically only the noun or it consists of the pronoun, right? Without any other words it describes or modifies it. So now we cannot still think of five words that talks about the subject. Nope. You know? And the simple predicate tells us what. And if we look at we see the simple predicate, our simple subject is a noun or pronoun, and then we have a simple predicate, right? And a simple predicate tells us what the subject is doing. And if we look at our simple predicate, right? Our simple predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. It is just the verb without any other verbs. In our previous, where we said we're completing the predicate, right? It was the verb and all the other words it describes or tells us about the verb. In this case, with the simple predicate, it is basically just the predicate that tells us what the subject is doing, right? So it's basically only the verb without any other words that describes or modifies it. For example, her best friend sleeps, right? Which means that sleeps is our verb or our predicate. Or a best friend sleeps late on a weekend. So sleeps is our predicate. But if we had to use a complete predicate, and then it would have been sleeps late on a weekend. All right, now let's do our test. So we're going to select the simple subject, right? Simple subject. And remember the simple subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. And we're only identifying the noun or we're only identifying the plural. And we need to select the simple subject, right? Her favorite pastime subject most surprises, sorry, most people. So her favorite pastime surprises most people. We need to select the simple subject. Subject. Remember, a subject, it either tells us who or what is doing something. The subject, who or what is doing something. Is it pastime or people that is doing something? The simple subject. So, a favorite pastime surprises most people. You need to select, or we need to select, the simple subject. It needs to tell us who or what is doing something. And if we select the simple subject, right, the subject that tells us who or what is doing something, then we will say it is people that does something. Oh, pastime. Simple subject. I apologize. Is it Karamvi, right? So it is pastime that is our simple subject that tells us who or what is doing something. Because they specifically say that it's either noun or the pronoun that is a simple subject. So now we need to select the simple predicate, right? The predicate, which is the verb. He circled his favorite line of the poem. He circled his favorite line of the poem. Is it circled or is it poem? He circled his favorite line of the poem. Circled or poem? If we select the simple predicate, right, which is our verb, and then we will say it is circled. Now we need to select the simple subject, right, which tells us who or what is doing something. Her best friend moved away last summer. So her best friend moved away last summer. So we need to select the simple subject within this sentence. So either summer or the friend. So summer or the friend. So her best friend moved away last summer. And if we select the simple subject, we will say it is either friend. All right, so that is the end of our lesson on subject and predicate. We said a complete subject, right? It tells us who or what is doing something. And with a complete subject, right, it is basically telling us who is doing the action, right? And then with a simple predicate, with a complete predicate, it tells us literally the action that is being done and every other thing that tells us about the action. And then we have a simple subject, which is basically the noun and the pronoun. And then the simple predicate is basically only the verb without all the other extra other words. that tells us more about the subject. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on subject and predicate. Thank you very much for joining the class. Till next time, goodbye.